Jack. Yeah, she thought she was being clever, but little did she know, I had already learned everything from one of her colleagues. Disgusted by what was happening, they felt I deserved to know the truth. Over time, I managed to temper my anger and carefully prepare for what was about to unfold. Tonight was the night. It would all happen after dinner. Kayla, tonight then? Mary, my friend, asked over the phone. Yeah, I replied, trying to keep my nerves steady. I'm finally going to do it. After dinner, I'll hand him a beer and then let him know. I'll call you later and fill you in. Just remember, Mary advised firmly, stay strong. He won't like it at first, but you have to remain firm. He has no choice. If he truly loves you, he'll let you do this because your happiness matters. I'll keep that in mind, I said with a deep breath. Just like we discussed, right? Exactly. Be calm, but stay firm. Let him throw his tantrum. Once it's out of his system, he'll come around and realize that you're in charge. That's right, I echoed, gaining confidence. And as far as he knows, this is only temporary. Once he accepts it, he might even start to enjoy it. Are you sure about this? I asked, hesitating slightly. Jack can be really stubborn. Kayla, Jack loves you more than anything. Sure, he'll get mad, but he'll calm down and remember that he'd do anything to make you happy, even this. Okay, I agreed, though still nervous. You're the expert. Trust me, Mary said with conviction. I had to ruin 2 marriages to get it right, but I perfected this method with my 3rd husband. You've met him. He's completely devoted now. He even stands by the bed when I'm with someone else and helps clean up afterward. A month from now, you'll see another Jack. He'll fall in line, and your marriage will be more secure than ever. Plus, you'll have the freedom to enjoy yourself. I finished work and headed home, determined to carry out the plan. I prepared Jack's favorite dinner, setting the stage. When he walked through the door, he greeted me with his usual warmth, saying, I love you, and kissing me on the cheek. It made my heart race, knowing what I was about to tell him. Despite my confidence earlier, I still felt nervous. This was going to be a major change in our marriage, but I believed it was worth it. Mary's feminine marriage ministry had worked wonders for her and her husband, and I had seen firsthand how happy they both seemed. Surely Jack would come to love it too. Dinner was pleasant and calm. We talked about our days and shared laughs over some news stories. It felt like any other evening, a peaceful moment before the storm. After dinner, I insisted Jack relax with a beer while I cleaned up. He tried to help, but I assured him I had it under control. Once the dishes were in the dishwasher and the leftovers stored away, I knew it was time. I poured myself a glass of wine to steady my nerves and joined Jack in the living room. Jack, honey, we need to talk. I began, trying to sound as composed as possible. Sure, honey. What's up? He asked, looking up from his drink. Okay, I said, inhaling deeply. This might be hard for you to hear, but it's something I really need to do. Please remember, this is only temporary. Jack leaned forward, his face curious but calm. What do you need? If it's that important to your happiness, of course, I'll do what I can. So far, so good. He hadn't even flinched. Well, I began carefully. We've talked about having kids, and I'm almost ready for that. But before we start, there are some things I need to do first. It'll only take a couple of months, and then we can move forward. That's great, Jack said, still calm. What do you need to do? Here it was, the moment of truth. Jack, I need to explore a little before I settle down completely. It's temporary, and afterward, I'll be the best wife and mother you could ever dream of. Jack raised an eyebrow, but didn't interrupt. Go on, he said. I'll be seeing other men for a while, I admitted. We'll still have our time together, but I'll also spend time with others to clear my head. But remember, it's only physical with them. You're the one I love. Jack set his beer down and looked me in the eye. Kayla, it doesn't sound like you're asking for permission. It sounds like you've already decided. He paused before continuing, his voice calm but firm. If you're asking for my approval, I can't give it. But if you're telling me this is what you're going to do, then you're a grown woman, and I won't stop you. I was stunned. Mary was right. He didn't yell or raise his voice. He stayed calm. Could he really accept this new role in our marriage? So, how is this going to work? Jack asked, his tone even. Are you moving out? Or are you bringing these men here? I hesitated. No one's moving out. We'll both keep living here because we're married. You're my husband, and I love you. These other men, it's just a temporary thing. Jack leaned back, his face unreadable. If that's what you've decided, Kayla, then let's see where this goes. I might visit them or bring them here, I began, gauging Jack's reaction. In those cases, you'd need to sleep in the spare bedroom. I don't see the point of renting a hotel room when we could just stay here. It's practical. Jack raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. I'm still not in favor of this, he said plainly. And let's make one thing clear. We won't be intimate during this period. I won't risk catching any STDs. After you're done, we'll wait until you're tested and cleared. Have fun, but don't worry about me. My heart skipped a beat. Jack, I can't say I'm not a little disappointed, I admitted, trying to keep my voice light. I love you, and I'll miss being close to you. But I get it. I'll just have to live with it. That's great, honey, I continued, encouraged by his calm demeanor. So, when do you plan to start your little flings? Tomorrow night, I replied, my tone casual. Mary and I are planning to hit a club. A couple of guys from work might join us. I'm not sure if anything will happen, but I might bring one of them back for the night. Jack nodded thoughtfully. Since we won't be intimate while you're doing this anyway, maybe it's best if I just move into the spare room for the next couple of months. That's probably a good idea, I agreed, surprised by his maturity. Don't worry about it, Jack said. I'll have my things moved by the time you get home tomorrow night. He turned back to his newspaper, as if we'd been discussing the weather. I couldn't believe how composed he was. Mary had been right. Jack was handling this better than I could have imagined. Sure, he had a few boundaries, but he wasn't even angry. In 2 months, he'd be under my thumb, just as Mary had predicted. Besides, I knew his insistence on abstinence wouldn't last. In a week or two, he'd be back in my bed, and I could use his longing to further cement his new role as my devoted, compliant husband. Later that evening, I called Mary. Hi, Mary. It's Kayla, I said, buzzing with excitement. Hey girl, how'd it go last night? Oh my God, Mary, you wouldn't believe it. Jack was so mature about everything. I expected him to lose it, but he didn't even raise his voice. He was calm and accepting of the whole thing. I told you he'd comply, Mary said, laughing. Do you think he'd be ready to watch tonight? Not yet, I admitted. In fact, I don't even plan to suggest it. He said he won't be intimate with me while I'm seeing others. But that won't last long. A week or two of just using his hands, and he'll be right back, begging to be close. That could be fun, Mary teased. So, what now? Since he refused intimacy, I had him moved to the spare room. He's packing as we speak. He promised to be completely moved out before I come home tonight. Huh. I love that you called it the owner's bedroom instead of the master bedroom. I'm stealing that, Mary said with a laugh. You should, I replied, laughing with her. Anyway, I should finish getting ready. I'll see you at the club. By the time I was ready to leave, Jack had nearly finished boxing up his belongings. I'm not sure why you're packing everything when you could just carry it down the hall, I said. It's more efficient this way, he explained. Less walking, and I can sort through what I don't need. I shrugged, too busy applying the finishing touches to my look. Jack said nothing about the little red cocktail dress I wore, though I caught him glancing at me in my garter belt and stockings. As I picked up my clutch and headed for the door, I mentioned casually, I might not be alone when I come back, so don't wait up. Jack nodded, closing the last box. Don't worry about me. I'll have everything moved by the time you return. Despite his calm demeanor, a strange unease lingered within me as I left. I brushed it aside, focusing instead on the excitement of the night ahead. At the club, I met Mary and 2 colleagues, Larry and Josh. Both were account managers, known for their charm and physical appeal. As the drinks flowed and the music pulsed, I danced with each of them, feeling their hands linger on my waist and their hardness press against me during slow songs. Later, Mary and I retreated to the restroom to decide how the night would end. After a quick game of rock, paper, scissors, it was decided. I'd take Josh home, and Mary would leave with Larry. Back at the house, the lights were off. Assuming Jack was asleep, I led Josh quietly down the hall to my room. Jack's belongings were gone, just as he'd promised. Smiling to myself, I closed the door behind us, ready to embrace the adventure I had planned. The night with Josh had been exhilarating, a mix of passion and indulgence that left me physically and emotionally drained. As he spanked me playfully during our intimate moments, I thought about how I might reserve such gestures for my lovers and perhaps reward Jack with them sparingly, only on special occasions like his birthday or our anniversary. Afterward, Josh and I shared a quick shower before collapsing into bed, only to wake up and repeat the routine the next morning. When Josh finally left, citing family obligations, I threw on my robe and wandered to the kitchen for coffee. Strangely, Jack hadn't brewed any, even though it was well past 9 a.m. He was usually up by now. It irritated me. After all, would it hurt him to make me coffee and breakfast, especially after I'd been out all night? I decided I'd address it later, though the little reward I'd planned for his cooperation in moving to the spare room suddenly seemed far less appealing. After a quick breakfast and a soothing shower, I dressed casually in old shorts, a t-shirt, and a basic bra. It wasn't like I had plans beyond lounging around Jack, so there was no need for effort. Just as I finished tying my hair into a ponytail, the phone rang. It was Mary. "Hey, seductive thing," she greeted cheerfully. "How was Josh last night?" "Absolutely amazing," I gushed. Exactly what I thought it would be. Speaking of Jack, though, I'm kind of annoyed. He didn't make coffee or breakfast this morning. He's probably still asleep. Mary clicked her tongue. He needs to know that's unacceptable. Show him you're disappointed. Make your expectations clear. And when he does something right, reward him. That way, he'll have an incentive to try harder. I'm actually getting angrier just thinking about it, I admitted. Hold on. I'm going to get his lazy ass out of bed. Marching to the spare bedroom, I pounded on the door, calling Jack's name. No response. I tried again, louder this time. Still nothing. Frustrated, I twisted the knob and pushed the door open, only to find the room empty. His clothes weren't in the closet. My stomach dropped. Running through the house, I checked every room. His tools were gone, and so was his truck. Panic set in. "Mary," I gasped into the phone. "Jack moved out." Mary's voice remained calm. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I said, realization dawning on me. He never said he was moving into the spare room. He just said he was moving out of mine. I thought he meant down the hall, but he meant out of the house completely. "Don't call him," Mary advised firmly. "It'll make you look weak. Let him come crawling back. This actually gives you leverage. When he does return, you can punish him and make him beg to come back. Use this to your advantage. You could even let Josh or Larry get you pregnant and make Jack raise the baby." I hesitated, conflicted. "Are you sure that's the right move?" "Trust me," Mary insisted. "It works. Look at my husband." As much as her confidence reassured me, unease lingered. Despite everything, I loved Jack. I wanted him in my life, not just as a submissive partner, but as the man I planned to grow old with. Mary's feminine lifestyle sounded enticing, offering the freedom to explore other men while keeping Jack as a devoted spouse. Maybe, eventually, I could negotiate with him. Perhaps if I promised to give up other relationships, I could use it as a bargaining chip, binding him to me emotionally. Of course, he wouldn't need to know the promise was conditional. Shaking off my doubts, I prepared a simple dinner, poured a glass of wine, and went to bed. Throughout the week, there was no word from Jack. Mary assured me this was expected and predicted he'd reach out soon. Her certainty was comforting, though the silence only amplified my unease. Each passing day without contact felt like a test of patience and control, one I wasn't entirely sure I was prepared for. The week had taken a surreal turn. I had been meeting Larry, Josh, and a few other guys daily, indulging in brief escapades during breaks. A particularly adventurous double session with Larry and Josh was planned for Friday afternoon. The casual camaraderie at the coffee machine that morning was abruptly interrupted when a woman in professional attire approached us. With an air of authority, she inquired if we were Kayla Adams, Mary Morgan, Josh Johnson, and Larry Jones. After confirming our identities, she handed each of us an envelope, took pictures with a small digital camera, and mentioned that we had all been served. Her tone was light, almost mocking, as she quipped about it being a joke. Before we could ask further questions, she waltzed into our boss's office without knocking. Minutes later, she exited the building with an unsettling cheerfulness, leaving us to face the reality of the documents we now held. Opening the envelopes, we discovered they contained divorce papers, all citing spousal infidelity. My heart dropped. The world around me seemed to blur as I tried to process what this meant. Josh and Larry were equally stunned, their phones ringing almost simultaneously. Their wives had apparently received proof of their infidelity. From the snippets of their tense conversations, it was clear their lives were unraveling as swiftly as mine. The shock deepened when our boss stormed out of his office, his voice echoing through the floor. Adams, Morgan, Johnson, Jones, my office now. His tone left no room for argument, and the four of us shuffled past him, heads bowed. Inside, he slammed the door and launched into a tirade. The tension in the room was palpable as he waved a manila envelope in our faces, demanding an explanation for what he described as a catastrophe. None of us dared to speak. His frustration only grew as he detailed the situation. A lawsuit against the company for violating its moral conduct code. We had not only jeopardized our jobs, but also placed the company in legal peril. He accused us of using company property and time for inappropriate conduct, a claim backed by evidence so damning that denying it seemed futile. Furious, he informed us that a court order prevented him from firing us until the case was resolved, much to his evident dismay. He dismissed us with a stern warning, leaving us to stew in our shame as we exited his office. The weight of his words hung over us as we returned to our desks, the gravity of our actions settling in. An hour later, a company-wide email landed in every inbox. The message outlined sweeping changes to address the scandal. Employees were now required to complete an online morals training course by the following Friday. Security measures were intensified. Spot checks in secluded areas, a locked supply room accessible only with a security escort, and restrictions on personal use of company computers. The email's tone was stern, leaving no room for interpretation. It was clear the company intended to root out any further indiscretions. As I read the email, my inbox began to fill with hate mail from colleagues. The scorn from coworkers was immediate and unrelenting. That evening, the four of us gathered at a bar across the street, retreating to a dimly lit corner table. The disapproving stares from other employees at happy hour were unavoidable, a silent testament to our disgrace. "At least we still have jobs," Mary muttered, trying to inject some optimism into the grim atmosphere. "For now," Josh added bitterly. "But this isn't about leniency. Jack's not trying to minimize damage. He's out for blood." The mention of Jack sent a chill through me. His calculated move to include our workplace in the court order was no accident. It wasn't just about exposing infidelity. It was about dismantling my world piece by piece. He had taken control of the narrative, and we were left scrambling in the aftermath. Sitting there, nursing my drink, I couldn't help but feel that this was only the beginning. Jack's retaliation was just getting started, and the worst was yet to come. Josh leaned back, swirling the remnants of his drink in his glass, and then, with the kind of confidence only a tipsy man could muster, said, "Why don't you just show up at his work? He has to go there eventually, right?" I stared at him, dumbfounded. "Josh, do you really think storming into his workplace is the best idea, after everything that's happened?" He shrugged, as though my concern was irrelevant. "Desperate times, Kayla. Besides, it's not like you have many options left." Mary chimed in, nodding thoughtfully. "It might actually work. If he's been avoiding you, seeing you face to face could force him to talk." Their casual suggestion felt ridiculous, but desperation had already taken root. Jack had severed every line of communication, blocking my number, ignoring messages, even shutting out Mary and our shared acquaintances. It was as if he'd erased me from his life entirely. I sighed, swirling the last sip of my wine, trying to imagine the scene. Me, marching into Jack's office, demanding a conversation. The thought made my stomach churn. Yet, as much as I hated the idea, they weren't wrong. I needed to find him. I had to talk to him, to fix things, or at least try. "All right," I said finally, my voice firmer than I felt. "I'll go to his office tomorrow." Mary grinned. "That's the spirit. Just remember, be calm and composed. Don't give him any ammunition to throw back at you." Josh chuckled. "Yeah, keep it classy, Kayla." Their encouragement felt hollow, but I nodded anyway. I didn't tell them how much I dreaded facing Jack, or how much it hurt knowing that he might not want to see me. That night, I went home alone, the weight of my decision pressing down on me. The next morning, I dressed carefully, choosing something neutral but flattering. I needed to appear calm, confident, and approachable, despite feeling anything but. As I drove to Jack's office, my thoughts raced. What would I say? How would he react? Would he even agree to talk to me? I parked a few blocks away, stalling for a moment to gather my composure. The building loomed ahead, a stark reminder of the life we'd built together, the life that now seemed so far away. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car and walked toward the entrance. Inside, the receptionist greeted me with a polite smile that faltered when I gave her my name. "Oh," she said, her voice uncertain. "Jack's not here today." "What?" The word slipped out before I could stop it. He's been working remotely this week." She hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "Is there something I can help you with?" I shook my head, the lump in my throat growing. Of course he wasn't here. Why had I thought it would be this easy? Defeated, I turned and left the building, my steps heavy as I returned to the car. Josh's brilliant suggestion had failed spectacularly, and I was no closer to finding Jack than I had been the night before. Sitting behind the wheel, I stared at the dashboard, my thoughts a chaotic mess. Where was Jack? Why was he so determined to shut me out completely? And what would I do now? For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt truly lost. The certainty I'd clung to, the belief that I could control the situation, that I could fix everything, had crumbled. And in its place was an emptiness I didn't know how to fill. I declined Josh's misguided suggestion, knowing it would only further complicate the mess I had created. Jack was my priority, and I was determined to salvage what little chance I had left. Every weekend, I scoured motel parking lots and passed by his friends' homes, hoping to spot his truck. I even tried following his best friend once, but it was futile. Jack was nowhere to be found. Monday morning, I staked out his workplace, but he never showed. Frustrated and desperate, I asked the receptionist about him. "Jack's on leave for 2 weeks," she said, her tone indifferent. It was another blow, and I realized how thoroughly Jack had distanced himself from me. I tried emailing him, pouring my heart into every word, apologizing for my betrayal and begging for another chance. To my surprise, he read the message. But Jack, being the man I'd always respected, didn't respond immediately. He made me wait, testing whether my remorse was genuine or just a fleeting attempt to avoid the consequences of my actions. 2 years later, our lives were unrecognizably different. Josh and Larry, divorced and penniless, had moved into a rundown apartment. Their social lives were in shambles, and their ex-wives had turned their children against them. Mary's husband, Harold, proved to be far more calculating than anyone anticipated. He quietly gathered evidence, liquidated their assets, and left her with nothing but a refinanced house she couldn't afford. She lost everything: her job, her reputation, and her standing in their community. And me? I was kneeling beside the bed, undressed except for a chastity belt, fulfilling the penance I had promised Jack. Over time, he began to ease his strictness, but he never fully let go of the control I willingly handed over. Our relationship had changed, yet Jack's love remained steadfast. I became a stay-at-home mother to our 2-year-old twins, grateful for a second chance at the life I nearly destroyed. Though Jack had the freedom to bring other women home, he rarely did. When he did, it was always with my consent and presence. He had offered me an out, a fair divorce and the freedom to walk away, but I couldn't imagine a life without him. My actions had redefined our marriage, and while the dynamic had shifted, so had my understanding of love, loyalty, and the value of mutual respect. Now, I reflect on the choices that led us here. I had been swept up in the illusion of a feminine lifestyle, blindly chasing an idea that promised empowerment but delivered nothing but chaos. In trying to dominate, I lost sight of what truly mattered: a partnership built on trust, love, and equality. Jack and I have rebuilt, though not without scars. I know I'm judged for staying, for enduring, and for fighting for a marriage I nearly destroyed. But here's the real question. Can true love survive betrayal? Can a relationship evolve into something stronger after being shattered? Or are some wounds too deep to heal? What do you think? Could you forgive? Or would you walk away?